So now that you've done a lot of this work, like in the past, now you're doing a rewrite. What is it like? Other things that you've maybe learned from that experience that maybe are going to make things easier now? That because as you said, you started it. It was like your first attempt at doing this. I assume there's a lot you've learned from doing it at least once.
Right. So one big lesson: don't trust AMD things to work. It might sound funny, but it was extremely stressful situation. One of the first workloads I did, sort of when I contracted for AMD, was a closed source application. I don't remember which one, either 3ds Zephyr or Reality Capture. And so I enable everything that is required for this application, both host code and in the compiler, but for some reason it doesn't work.
Mhm.
And since it's closed source application, it's relatively tricky to debug, but eventually I found the kernel that is producing incorrect data.
Mhm.
And I run this, so I extract this kernel and the data it operates on, and I run it both on the CUDA stack and on the Zluda.
Mhm.
And it works correct on both every time. But for some reason, the same kernel fails when run inside the application. And at this time, I'm starting to panicking a little because it's, impossible situation, impossible to debug. It should work. It just defies the logic and the laws of physics. And I tried it both ways. So I ran the whole workload on Zluda, and because I thought, maybe earlier kernel under Zluda is computing things wrong, and I run it on both source from CUDA, source from Zluda, and try it Zluda to CUDA, CUDA to Zluda. It all works well, gives right result.
Mhm.
And purely by luck, I realized that there's a bug in AMD host code. For certain memory copies,
Mhm.
it copies them incorrectly. It was my first revelation. Do not trust host code, even if it's simple mapping, even if it looks simple. Do not trust that AMD host code is going to work correctly. Always double check. So there's, it sounds pessimistic. There's not so many cases, but generally, if it's something that has to do with textures, then double check
Mhm.
if you're using heap.
Mhm.
So that's what I learned. There's some other lessons, and they're very Zluda specific, and it was actually somewhat frustrating starting from this point 2 years ago, because I look at my code from before the rollback, and I look at this compilation path, and I think, that's wrong. That's wrong. There's better ways to do this.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's better ways to do this, but I have to fix all that other code before I arrive at this.
Mhm. Mhm. So you can see where the goal is, but there's just
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
much
yeah.
to
I
get there.
remember. I just remember. Oh yeah, I got rid of this part because there are better ways to do this, but I have to live with this again.
Mhm. But hopefully the second time around you can get there quicker. Like now that you
Yeah, yeah.
know what
It's
you're
it's
doing.
much quicker right now
Mhm.
because uh, firstly because the workloads are different. So, one thing I did not mention
Mhm.
that we're getting rid of. I mean, somewhat sadly, I have mixed feelings about this. We're not going to do ray tracing
Mhm.
because Zluda has had an implementation of optics. Optics is Nvidia's framework to do ray tracing, and it's very complex. During my contract work at AMD, I think optics took, I don't know, almost a year. It was very complex. Not only optics itself, but also applications using optics. So the goal has been Arnold. It's closed source, very complex rendering solution. Debugging it was a lot of effort. So it's going to be so much faster without optics. So much easier.
It would be cool to have it, you know, if you had infinite time.
Yeah,
infinite,
I know. I
infinite
agree.
money,
I agree.
You know.
Yeah. So one of the things. So as I left AMD, or yeah, as I left AMD, released Zluda. So something that became really clear really quickly was that there's a lot of interest in machine learning workloads.
Right.
There's relatively little interest in sort of professional graphics workloads. So I've been focusing on. So there's a time when I left AMD and had nothing else lined up. So I was still working on Zluda, but focusing on the workloads for which there's no commercial interest. And this, I almost got GameWorks. Well, I got it running in one application, but never merged the code. And then things similar to it. So like, I don't remember. There's this suit. There's this suit for 3D photogrammetry. I don't remember what was it called. So also has been requested, but there's no commercial interest in it.
Right. But I like to just, well, most people will describe Nvidia at this point not as a GPU company, they're an AI company, right? Like, I like to call them a machine learning shovel company. You know, during a gold rush, you're not don't dig for gold, sell the shovels. That's what Nvidia does.
Yeah. That's true. If you look at the machine learning market, machine learning hardware market, there's two markets. There's Nvidia market and non-Nvidia market. And a lot of people want Zluda for machine learning because they want, not by the means of hardware, but the means of software, take part of Nvidia market, because Nvidia market is much bigger than non-Nvidia market.
Yeah, and that's just not going to change in the real world. Like, it's like no matter what AMD or Intel does.
AMD making effort, and AMD is, I think, closest, because as I said, they made the right strategic call to make their APIs close to NVIDIA APIs. So maybe the closest. The problem is their execution is just not good. And purely talking about software, there's also some hardware choices, some design choices they made in the hardware that make porting from CUDA to HEAP more difficult than it should be.